The Galactic Council had ruled the known universe for 12,000 years. 17 ancient species sat on its high seats, making laws and decisions for billions of worlds. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had watched younger races crawl out of their home planets and take their first steps into the stars. And they had always, without exception, brought those younger races under their control. So when humanity achieved faster than light travel in what the Council considered an impossibly short time, the elders were curious, but not worried. Humans were just another young species, another group of primitives who would soon learn their place in the grand order of things. The Council sent an invitation to Earth, offering humanity a chance to join the galactic community. It was a generous gesture, or so they believed. Ambassador Nathan Cole received the invitation on a cold morning in Geneva. He was 53 years old, a career diplomat who had spent his life negotiating treaties and resolving conflicts. He had gray hair that was once black, deep lines around his eyes from years of difficult conversations, and a reputation for being impossible to intimidate. When he read the Council's message, he felt a strange mixture of excitement and caution. Humanity was about to meet its galactic neighbors. The question was whether those neighbors would be friends or masters. 3 months passed before the Council granted Nathan an audience. 3 months of waiting, of being told that the elders were busy, that humanity's request was being processed, that patience was a virtue young species needed to learn. Nathan understood the game. They wanted him to feel small and unimportant before he even walked through the door. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Martin traveled with him to the Council's capital station, a massive structure called Valanthos Prime that orbited a dying star. Lisa was 38, sharp-minded and sharp-tongued, with short brown hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had served as Nathan's aide for 7 years and knew him better than most. "They made us wait 3 months for this meeting," she said as their shuttle approached the station. 3 months, while our government sent message after message asking for a date. Nathan watched the station grow larger through the viewport. It was beautiful in a cold way, all crystal spires and flowing architecture that seemed to defy physics. "They want us nervous. They want us grateful just to be here. Are you nervous? I am realistic. We are about to walk into a room full of beings who have been running this galaxy since before humans learned to write. They have seen 1,000 species like us. They think they know exactly how this conversation will go." Lisa smiled slightly. "And do they?" Nathan did not answer. The shuttle docked with a gentle shudder, and they stepped out into a corridor that seemed designed to make visitors feel like insects. The ceiling rose hundreds of meters above them, covered in artwork depicting the great achievements of the elder races. The floor was polished to a mirror shine, reflecting their small figures as they walked toward the Council chamber. 2 guards met them at the massive crystalline doors. They were Corax insectoid beings with hard shells and compound eyes that seemed to look everywhere at once. The guards said nothing, simply turning and pushing open the doors with their forearms. The Council chamber took Nathan's breath away. Despite his determination to remain unimpressed, it was a vast circular room with 17 platforms rising in a semicircle, each one holding representatives of an elder species. The ceiling was transparent, showing the burning orange light of the dying star outside. The acoustics were perfect, designed so that every whisper would carry to every corner. Nathan recognized some of the species from the briefing. Materials Earth scientists had prepared. The Velthari occupied the central platform, their bodies made of living liquid metal that constantly shifted and flowed. They were the founders of the Council, the oldest of the old. High Arbiter Zelthane led their delegation, his silver form rippling as he turned his attention to the human visitors. The Corax sat to the left, their clicking mandibles creating a constant background noise. The Nathori floated to the right, beings of pure thought who had long ago abandoned physical bodies in favor of mechanical shells that hummed with energy. The Draken were there too. Massive reptilian warriors who had conquered half the galaxy before the Council convinced them that diplomacy was more profitable than war. "Humanity," Zelthane said, his voice booming through translation devices that made it sound like rolling thunder. "You stand before the Galactic Council. You have been granted provisional membership in our community. You will now hear the terms of your acceptance." Nathan stood straight and kept his expression neutral. Beside him, Lisa activated her tablet to record the proceedings. The terms came quickly, delivered in a tone that made clear they were not suggestions. Humanity would receive access to established trade routes, but only through designated checkpoints where a 40% tariff would be collected. Human ships would be restricted to 3-star systems for the next 500 years, a probationary period to ensure good behavior. Humans would provide soldiers for Council peacekeeping operations, but would not be allowed to hold command positions. Any human technology deemed too advanced would be confiscated for review and possible redistribution to the wider community. These terms are standard for all provisional species, Zelthane concluded. They are non-negotiable. Acceptance is the only path forward. Nathan felt Lisa tense beside him. He understood her reaction. The terms were not an invitation to join a community. They were the conditions of surrender to an empire that had not even bothered to fight. He took a moment to compose his thoughts before speaking. "I understand the terms as you have presented them. May I ask one question before I respond?" Zelthane's liquid form rippled in what might have been amusement. "You may ask, what happens if we decline?" The chamber went silent. Several of the elder representatives shifted on their platforms. The Korax stopped clicking. Even the constant hum of the Nithori seemed to quiet. "No provisional species has ever declined," Zelthane said slowly, as if explaining something obvious to a child. "The galaxy is vast and filled with dangers. Without council protection, without access to trade networks, without the guidance of elder wisdom, your species would face great difficulties." Nathan nodded, as if considering this seriously. "I see. Then I must return to Earth and present these terms to our people. We will give you our answer within 1 standard month." "There's nothing to consider," one of the Nithori interjected, its mechanical voice flat and certain. "The mathematics are clear. Acceptance is the only logical choice." Nathan allowed himself a small smile. "Perhaps you are right, but humanity has its own traditions. We discuss important decisions. We argue about them. We let everyone have a voice before we choose our path. Even when the answer seems obvious to everyone else." He bowed formally, a gesture of respect that felt hollow even as he made it. Then he turned and walked toward the doors, Lisa falling into step beside him. He could feel 17 sets of alien eyes watching his back, could sense their confusion and irritation at this breach of protocol. The crystalline doors closed behind them with a sound like singing glass. "They are going to be furious when we refuse," Lisa said quietly as they walked back toward their shuttle. Nathan's expression hardened. "Then they should have offered us terms that a free people could accept. Do you think Earth will actually say no? The governments, the corporations, everyone who wants access to alien technology and trade. I think humanity did not spend 10,000 years climbing out of caves and surviving ice ages and building civilizations just to hand over our future to strangers who see us as children." Nathan paused at the shuttle door. "Looking back at the grand architecture of Valanthos Prime, we will make our own way. We always have." They boarded the shuttle and began the long journey home, leaving the Galactic Council. Wonder whether they had just met the most foolish species in the galaxy or something else entirely. 1 month later, the council chamber on Valanthos Prime was filled with more beings than it had seen in centuries. Word had spread across the galaxy that the young human species would deliver its response to the council's terms. Ambassadors and merchants and journalists from 100 worlds had traveled to witness the moment. Most of them expected to see humanity bow its head and accept its place at the bottom of galactic society. A few wondered if the humans might try to negotiate for slightly better conditions. None of them expected what was about to happen. Nathan Cole entered the chamber with a larger delegation this time. General Marcus Webb walked beside him. A broad man with shoulders like a bull and a face that looked like it had been carved from rough stone. Marcus had commanded Earth's military forces for 15 years and had never lost a battle. He did not plan to start losing now. Even if the battlefield was a room full of politicians, Dr. Patricia Huang followed close behind. A small woman with gentle eyes that hid one of the sharpest minds humanity had ever produced. She had 3 doctoral degrees and had led the team that cracked faster than light travel. She understood technology better than most species, understood their own reflections. 3 other diplomats completed the delegation, their faces calm and unreadable as they walked across the polished floor toward the center of the chamber. "Hi, Arbiter." Zelthane did not waste time with greetings or pleasantries. His silver form churned with barely hidden impatience as he spoke. "Humanity. You have had your month of discussion. The Council awaits your answer." Nathan stepped forward. He had not slept well during the journey back to Valanthos Prime. He had spent the month arguing with politicians and generals and corporate leaders, convincing them that what he proposed was not madness, but necessity. Now, all those arguments came down to this single moment. Let the silence stretch for just a heartbeat longer than was comfortable. "United Nations Assembly has reviewed the terms offered by the U.S. Galactic Council," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "We have debated extensively. We have considered every angle and every possible outcome. We have listened to those who urged acceptance and those who urged rejection." He paused again, looking around at the alien faces watching him. Some showed curiosity. Others showed boredom. A few showed something that might have been concern. "We respectfully decline." The chamber exploded into chaos. Delegates shouted in languages that the translation systems struggled to process. The Corax representative rose fully on its platform, compound eyes blazing with outrage. Several Velthari forms began churning so violently that drops of liquid metal scattered across their platform. Even the normally emotionless Nathori emitted frequencies of what could only be described as shock. Zelthane's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Silence. The chamber quieted, though angry murmurs continued to ripple through the crowd. "You cannot decline," Zelthane said, his voice cold and hard. "This is not how things are done. Every provisional species for 12,000 years has accepted these terms. It is tradition. It is the natural order." Nathan met the High Arbiter's gaze without flinching. "And yet we have declined. Traditions can be broken. Natural orders can change." "You condemn your species to isolation," called out the Draken representative, his massive reptilian form leaning forward aggressively. "You will have no trade with Council worlds. No protection from pirates or hostile species. No access to the knowledge and resources that could advance your civilization by millennia." General Marcus Webb stepped forward, his deep voice rumbling through the chamber like distant thunder. "We have been isolated before. We have faced worse odds than this. Humanity survived ice ages that killed most life on our planet. We survived plagues that wiped out half our population. We survived wars where we turned our most terrible weapons against ourselves. We are still here. We will manage." Dr. Patricia Huang spoke next, her quiet voice somehow commanding attention despite its softness. "And we will continue our own research. We will develop our own technologies. We will chart our own course through the stars. Perhaps in a century or two, when we have grown stronger, we can return to this conversation as equals rather than beggars." The Corax representative made a harsh clicking sound that the translator rendered as mocking laughter. "Equals, you are infants playing with toys you do not understand. You achieved space travel through luck and accident. You will never match what we have built over thousands of years." Nathan smiled then, a genuine expression that seemed to unsettle several of the watching delegates. There was no fear in that smile, no uncertainty. Only a quiet confidence that made the ancient beings on their high platforms suddenly uncomfortable. "Perhaps you are right," Nathan said calmly. "Perhaps we are young and foolish and doomed to fail. Perhaps in 100 years our civilization will collapse and our species will fade into extinction. Forgotten by a galaxy that barely noticed we existed." He paused, letting his words hang in the air. "But I do not think so. And more importantly, we do not think so. Humanity has learned something in our short and violent history. Something that your council seems to have forgotten somewhere in your 12,000 years of tradition. And what is that?" Zelthane demanded. Nathan's voice grew stronger, filling the chamber with a conviction that needed no translation. Dignity cannot be negotiated away. Freedom is not something we will trade for safety. Our future belongs to us, not to strangers who see us as children to be managed. We did not crawl out of the mud of our world, did not survive everything the universe threw at us, did not split the atom and cure diseases and reach the stars just to become servants to anyone. Not to you. Not to anyone. He turned his back on the council then, a gesture that drew gasps from the watching crowd. In galactic diplomatic tradition, turning your back on the council was an insult of the highest order. It was a declaration that you did not recognize their authority over you. Nathan did not care. Humanity withdraws from these proceedings, he announced as he walked toward the doors. We wish the council well in its future endeavors. Perhaps our grandchildren will meet again someday under better circumstances and with better terms. His delegation followed him in perfect formation. General Webb walked with his head high and his shoulders squared, looking ready to fight the entire galaxy if necessary. Dr. Huang moved with quiet grace, her mind already racing ahead to the challenges that awaited them. The other diplomats kept their faces neutral, but their steps were firm and proud. The crystalline doors opened before them and closed behind them with that strange singing sound. The Galactic Council sat in stunned silence for a long moment. Then the arguments began, fierce and frightened. As the oldest powers in the galaxy tried to understand what had just happened, Lisa Martin was waiting at the shuttle, her tablet clutched tightly in her hands. It is done, Nathan said simply. We are on our own now. The whole galaxy will be watching us, Lisa replied. Waiting for us to fail. Hoping for it, some of them. Nathan looked back at the grand spires of Valanthos Prime one last time, and we had better not fail. They boarded the shuttle and began the long journey home. Behind them, the Galactic Council descended into the first real crisis it had faced in thousands of years. And across the galaxy, other young species watched the news feeds with something they had not felt in a very long time. Hope. 6 months had passed since humanity walked out of the council chamber. 6 months of silence from the small cluster of stars that humans called home. 6 months of growing unease among the elder species who had ruled the galaxy for so long. Hi, Arbiter. Zelthane called an emergency meeting of the council's inner circle. This was not the grand public chamber where speeches were made and traditions were upheld. This was a small, secure room deep within Valanthos Prime, shielded against every form of surveillance that galactic science had ever developed. Only the 7 most powerful elder species were invited. Only the most sensitive matters were discussed here. Zelthane's silver form flowed into the chamber first, taking his position at the head of the circular table. The others followed quickly. Vethrix of the Corax arrived with his compound eyes darting nervously. Morith of the Draken stomped in with barely contained aggression, his scales rattling with each step. The Nathori representative hummed into position, its mechanical shell gleaming under the soft lights. 3 others completed the circle, ancient beings who had seen civilizations rise and fall like waves on a beach. We have a problem, Zelthane began without ceremony. The humans have sealed their borders completely. Every probe we have sent into their space has been destroyed. Every ship that has approached their territory has been turned away by automated defense platforms. Morith snorted, smoke curling from his nostrils. Let them hide in their little corner of the galaxy. They will grow hungry soon enough. They will come crawling back, begging for the terms they were too proud to accept. That was my assumption as well, Zelthane replied. I was wrong. Show them what we have learned. Vethrix activated a holographic display at the center of the table. The image showed human space, a small cluster of unremarkable systems near the galaxy's outer edge. Before humanity claimed those systems, the Council had considered them worthless. Now those same systems pulsed with activity. Before their withdrawal, we managed to access some of their information networks, Vethrix explained. What we found was disturbing. What we have learned since then is worse. The display changed to show charts and graphs that made several of the elder representatives lean forward with concern. Human industrial production has increased by 300% in 6 months. They have expanded to 7 colony worlds with a total population approaching 12 billion. Their shipyards are producing vessels at a rate that should not be possible for such a young species. Impossible, Marth growled. They do not have the resources or the knowledge for such expansion. And yet the evidence is clear. Vethrix zoomed the display to show a single human space station. It was enormous, bristling with construction equipment and surrounded by partially completed ships. This facility alone is producing more tonnage per month than our largest shipyard. The Nithori representative spoke in its flat mechanical voice. How are they achieving this? Their technology was primitive 6 months ago. That is the most concerning part. Vethrix changed the display again. This time, showing research data that the Corax intelligence network had barely managed to intercept. They are pursuing lines of scientific inquiry that we abandoned thousands of years ago. Zelthane's form rippled with agitation. Explain. Dimensional folding. Artificial gravity manipulation at the quantum level. Biological enhancement without the genetic degradation that plagued our early experiments. Energy weapons that draw power directly from subspace. Vethrix paused, his compound eyes reflecting the glow of the display. Technologies that our ancestors declared impossible. They were declared impossible because they are impossible, Morith insisted. Our scientists spent centuries on those paths before admitting they led nowhere. An ancient voice spoke from the far side of the table. Dr. Seleth was the oldest Velthari still functioning. A scientist who had personally witnessed the rise and fall of 17 civilizations. He rarely attended council meetings anymore, preferring to spend his remaining years in quiet study. But Zelthane had specifically requested his presence today. Our ancestors gave up, Seleth said quietly. That is not the same as proving something impossible. They had already achieved comfort and stability. They had no reason to push through the difficult barriers that remained. So they declared those barriers permanent and moved on to easier pursuits. Are you saying the humans might succeed where we failed? The Nithori asked. I am saying that they approach problems differently than we do. I have studied what little data we recovered from their networks. Their scientific method is chaotic and inefficient by our standards. They pursue dozens of dead ends for every breakthrough. They waste enormous resources on experiments that have little chance of success. Seleth paused, his ancient form flowing slowly as he gathered his thoughts. But they do not stop. When they hit a barrier, they do not declare it permanent. They attack it from 100 different angles until something works. They treat every limitation as a temporary obstacle, rather than an eternal truth. It is exhausting to watch. It is also terrifyingly effective. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Vethrix changed the display one final time, showing projections that extended forward in time. Based on their current rate of advancement, human technology will match Council standards within 40 years. Within a century, they will surpass us in every measurable category. Then we must stop them now, Morith declared, slamming one massive fist against the table. Before they become a threat, we cannot contain. We have the ships. We have the weapons. We can crush them while they are still weak. Zelthane's form went very still. You are proposing war against a species that has done nothing aggressive toward us. A species whose only crime is refusing to accept terms that would have made them our servants. Their refusal was aggression enough. Their very existence is becoming a threat. Every day we wait, they grow stronger. Morath looked around the table, seeking support. We have destroyed species for less. We have erased civilizations that posed far smaller dangers, and each time we did so, we told ourselves it was necessary, Seleth said softly. We told ourselves we had no choice. We told ourselves the galaxy was better off without them. But I wonder sometimes if we simply could not tolerate the possibility that someone might do things differently than us. That someone might prove our ancient certainties wrong. The argument that followed was fierce and bitter. Morith demanded immediate military action. The Netheri calculated probabilities and outcomes, their analysis suggesting that war now would succeed, but carry long-term consequences that could not be predicted. Zelthane found himself caught between the weight of tradition and a growing sense that the galaxy was changing, in ways the Council was not prepared to handle. None of them knew that their secure chamber was not as secure as they believed. None of them suspected that humanity had spent 6 months doing far more than building ships and researching technology. Across the vast distances of space, In a command center buried deep beneath the mountains of Earth, Admiral Christopher Lane reviewed a transcript of the Council's emergency meeting. He read Morith's demands for war. He read the calculations of the Nethori. He read Sellett's quiet words about ancestors who gave up too easily. Then he turned to his staff and began issuing orders. The galaxy thought humanity was hiding. The galaxy thought humanity was afraid. The galaxy was about to learn how wrong it was. Admiral Christopher Lane stood on the bridge of the Earth's defense vessel Horizon, the most advanced warship humanity had ever built. Through the massive viewport, he could see the blackness of space dotted with distant stars, each one a sun that might have worlds orbiting it. Each world potentially home to beings who wanted humanity destroyed. Christopher was 47 years, old with calm brown eyes and steady hands that had never trembled in battle. He had grown up on a farm in Kansas, joined the Navy at 18, risen through the ranks by being smarter and tougher than anyone expected. Now, he commanded humanity's entire defensive fleet, a responsibility that would have crushed a lesser man. The bridge around him hummed with quiet activity. Officers monitored sensor arrays that watched every approach to human space. Technicians managed communication systems that linked together a network of defense. Platforms scattered across dozens of star systems. Everything was calm and controlled, exactly as Christopher demanded. Lieutenant Kevin Ross looked up from his communication station. A young man with red hair and freckles who looked too young to be serving on a warship, but had proven himself a dozen times over. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission on the Galactic Council diplomatic frequency. Christopher raised an eyebrow. 6 months of complete silence, and now the Council wanted to talk. Put it through. The main view screen flickered, and High Arbiter Zelthane's silver form appeared. The Velthari leader looked different than he had in the recordings Christopher had studied. There was something in the way his liquid body flowed that suggested uncertainty, perhaps even fear. Admiral Lane Zelthane said formally, I am contacting you on behalf of the Galactic Council. We wish to discuss the current situation between our peoples. Christopher kept his expression neutral. I am listening. There are factions within the Council who believe that military action against your species is necessary. They argue that humanity's rapid advancement poses a threat to galactic stability. I am reaching out because I do not share this view, but I may not be able to restrain those factions forever. I hope we can find a peaceful resolution before events spiral beyond control. Christopher nodded slowly, as if considering the High Arbiter's words carefully. In truth, he had expected this communication days ago. I appreciate your honesty. Let me be equally honest with you. Paused, choosing his next words with care. We know about the debate within your council. We know that Morith of the Drakon is pushing hardest for war. We know that the Nethori have calculated that an attack now would succeed with 94% probability. We know the disposition of your military forces, your supply lines, your communication networks, and the locations of your most critical infrastructure. Zelthane's form churned with visible agitation. That is not possible. Our security systems are the most advanced in the galaxy. No species has ever penetrated them. No species ever had reason to try as hard as we did. Christopher gestured to Lieutenant Ross, who transmitted a data package to the Council frequency. Check your systems. You will find everything I have said is accurate. Zelthane was silent for a long moment, presumably reviewing the information. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, the arrogance stripped away. How did you accomplish this? We spent 6 months preparing for the war your council was always going to consider starting. We did not hide in our territory feeling sorry for ourselves. We worked. Every hour of every day, we worked. Christopher allowed a hint of steel to enter his voice. We built ships. We developed weapons. We trained soldiers. And we planted assets throughout your space that your security systems never detected. What kind of assets? The view screen split to show a comprehensive map of Council territory. Red markers appeared at thousands of locations, marking military bases, communication hubs, power generation facilities, shipyards, and government centers. Observation posts hidden in asteroid fields. Sleeper agents on your space stations. Automated weapon platforms drifting in the dark spaces between your stars, waiting for activation codes. Christopher watched Zelthane's reaction carefully. We have 1,217 ships, capable of faster-than-light travel. Not as many as your combined fleets, but our ships are faster than yours. Our weapons are more powerful. Our shields are more efficient. You are describing preparations for war, Zelthane said slowly. Acts that could be considered aggression. I am describing preparations for defense against a war your council has been considering since the moment we walked out of your chamber. We have no desire for conflict. We never did. We want only to be left alone, to develop in peace, to grow at our own pace, to make our own choices about our future. Christopher leaned forward slightly. But we will not be conquered. We will not be subjugated. And we will not be exterminated because your council fears what we might become. Zelthane's form rippled in what might have been a sigh. What do you want? The same thing we wanted 6 months ago. Fair treatment. Equal standing. The right to trade and travel and grow without restrictions designed to keep us weak and dependent. We wanted to be partners, not servants. That offer still stands. The Council will never agree to treat a provisional species as equal to the elder races. It goes against everything we have built over 12,000 years. Christopher smiled slightly, though there was no warmth in it. Then the Council will have to change. The universe does not care about your traditions or your assumptions of superiority. It only cares about what is true. And the truth is that humanity is here. We are growing stronger every day. And we are not going away. He stood straighter, his voice carrying the weight of 8 billion humans who refuse to bow. You can accept us as equals, and we can build something together that benefits everyone. Or you can start a war that will cost both sides more than either can afford to lose. The choice is yours, but I suggest you make it carefully. The transmission ended. Zelthane stared at the blank screen for a long time before returning to the council chamber to deliver news that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. On the horizon, Lieutenant Ross turned to Admiral Lane with wide eyes. Sir, do we actually have all those assets in place? The sleeper agents and hidden platforms? Christopher looked out at the stars, thinking about the years of work that had led to this moment. About 70% of what I described is real. The other 30% is what we will have in place within 6 months if they give us the time. And if they do not, if they attack before we are ready. Christopher was quiet for a moment. Then we fight with what we have, and we make them pay for every inch of space they try to take from us. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. The humans had not been hiding. The humans had been preparing. And the Galactic Council, for the first time in 12,000 years, did not know what to do next in the shadows of 100 worlds. Other young species watched and waited and began to wonder if the old order was finally coming to an end. 1 year had passed since humanity walked away from the Galactic Council. 1 year of tension and fear and whispered conversations in the corridors of power across 1,000 worlds. 1 year that had changed everything. Ambassador Nathan Cole returned to Valanthos Prime. On a bright morning when the dying star outside cast everything in shades of orange and gold, he traveled with a small delegation this time, just Lisa Martin and 2 junior diplomats. There was no need for generals or scientists today. The fighting was over. Now came the harder work of building something new. The council chamber looked different than Nathan remembered. Several of the high platforms stood empty, their occupants having withdrawn from the council in the chaos of the past year. The Draken platform was occupied by new representatives, younger and quieter than the warriors who had sat there before. Nathan remembered the war. If 3 weeks of one-sided combat could be called a war, Morith had finally convinced enough council members to authorize a preemptive strike against human space. The Draken fleet had launched with 200 ships, expecting to crush humanity's defenses and force quick surrender. They had been wrong. Human intelligence had tracked every ship from the moment it left Draken space. Admiral Lane had positioned his forces perfectly, using the hidden platforms and observation posts to create an ambush that the Draken never saw coming. Weapons that bent space itself tore through Draken shields like paper. Ships that should have been impossible to hit vanished and reappeared behind enemy lines, striking from angles that Draken tacticians had never imagined. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, 173 Drakon ships drifted powerless in space, their weapons disabled and their engines dead. Not destroyed, disabled. Humanity had made a point of not killing when killing was not necessary. The Drakon homeworld had been surrounded within days. Human ships hung in orbit, weapons pointed at every military installation on the surface. And humanity had demanded only one thing in exchange for withdrawal: recognition as equals. The Drakon had agreed. They'd had no choice. And with that agreement, the foundation of the Galactic Council had cracked beyond repair. Now Nathan stood in the center of the chamber, looking up at the remaining elder species with calm eyes. High Arbiter Zelthane watched him from the central platform, his silver form flowing slowly and steadily. Ambassador Cole Zelthane said, "You requested this audience to present a proposal for future relations between humanity and the Council. We are prepared to listen." Nathan nodded. He had spent months preparing for this moment, arguing with politicians and military leaders and ordinary citizens about what humanity should ask for. In the end, they had agreed on something that surprised everyone. "The past year has been difficult for all of us," Nathan began. "We did not want war with the Drakon or anyone else. We wanted only to be treated with dignity and respect. When that was denied, we had no choice but to prepare for the worst." He paused, looking around the chamber at faces and forms that had once seemed so intimidating. "We understand now that the Council's treatment of provisional species was not born from hatred or cruelty. It was born from tradition, from 12,000 years of doing things a certain way because that was how they had always been done. Change is difficult. We understand because humanity struggles with the same problem. We cling to old ways even when they no longer serve us." A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber, but it did not show military deployments or threat assessments. Instead, it showed something else entirely: blueprints and research data and technological specifications. "We are prepared to share what we have learned," Nathan continued. "Our advances in dimensional physics and energy manipulation and medical science, not as tribute or payment for peace, but as gifts between equals, because we believe that the galaxy will be stronger if we grow together rather than apart." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. This was not what anyone had expected. The young species that had defeated the Drakon, that had planted spies throughout Council space, that had developed weapons beyond anything the elder races possessed, was offering to share everything freely. In return, we asked for nothing but what we asked for at the beginning: fair trade agreements without crushing tariffs, freedom to travel and explore without arbitrary restrictions, the right to develop according to our own values rather than rules imposed by others. Nathan's voice grew stronger. "And a seat on this council, not as a provisional member waiting for approval, but as a full partner in building the future of this galaxy." Zelthane's form rippled with something that might have been surprise. "You would share your technologies freely, even knowing they could someday be used against you?" Nathan smiled. "If we hoarded our knowledge out of fear, we would become exactly the kind of civilization we refused to serve. We did not fight for the right to be selfish. We fought for the right to be free, and freedom means nothing if we use it only to build walls and hoard power." Looked around the chamber one more time. "We have faith in something your council seems to have forgotten: progress, growth, the belief that tomorrow can be better than today if we work for it together. We reached the stars because we believed we could. We survived your rejection because we believed we deserved better. And we are offering partnership now because we believe that together we can achieve things none of us could accomplish alone." The debate that followed lasted for hours. Old prejudices clashed with new realities. Pride fought against pragmatism. Fear wrestled with hope. But slowly, carefully, minds began to change. When the vote was finally called, humanity was granted full membership in the Galactic Council by a margin of 2 votes. Nathan left the chamber feeling lighter than he had in years. Lisa fell into step beside him as they walked toward the shuttle bay. "Do you think this will actually work?" she asked quietly. "Real partnership, after everything that has happened?" Nathan thought about the question carefully. I think it will be hard. I think there will be setbacks and arguments and moments when everything seems impossible. Old hatreds do not disappear overnight. Trust takes years to build and seconds to destroy. They reached the viewport that looked out over the station, the dying star painting everything in warm light. But I also think humanity did not come this far just to stop now. We walked away from this place because we refused to be less than we could be. Now we walk back because we refuse to let fear and suspicion define the future. He turned to Lisa with tired but hopeful eyes. That is what being human means. We keep moving forward no matter what stands in our way. Behind them, the Galactic Council began the slow and painful process of becoming something new. It would take generations to fully heal the wounds of the past. There would be failures and successes, conflicts and cooperation, moments of despair and moments of triumph. But for the first time in 12,000 years, the galaxy was changing. The old certainties were crumbling. The rigid traditions were bending. And in their place, something new was growing. Something built on respect and partnership rather than dominance and submission. Humanity had walked away from the table when the terms were unjust. Now humanity sat at that same table as equals, helping to write new terms that would shape the future of countless worlds and across the galaxy. On planets where young species had watched and waited and hoped, a new era was beginning. The stars had never looked brighter.